Well, I know there have been some accusations by Uyghur and other human rights activists that the Biden administration might be softening its tone on China to try to win some kind of cooperation on climate change. Now, those are just rumors, but do you think have you seen anything like that?
Well, I thought that there's a double-edged sword with climate change, isn't there? Because on one hand, if you're looking for a sort of inoffensive excuse for decoupling your economy from China and getting companies out of China, that would be the way to do it, is to sort of pull a Trudeau. Say, oh, well, you're just not living up to our standards on treatment of women and transvestites or whatever. I mean, this is these issues that are very Western, sort of first world problems. You can use them as a way to especially appeal to your more liberal base and use them to decouple, which is the objective here, I would think. I mean, this is not, you don't go into a Cold War dependent on the other side. That's all this is. I mean, this whole thing is just really how do you negotiate the early stages of a Cold War, in my opinion. And so I would imagine that there must be some people in the Biden administration who see it that way too. Now, if that's the case, then they should be using the climate change as a tool to decouple.
That's interesting.
But I don't know that they're playing such clever three-dimensional chess here. Maybe they really just think that if they're nice to China and set a good example, China will respond.
Because I remember in the first maybe 2 years of the Trump administration, Trump was, he wanted to have his trade deal, use language like my friend Xi Jinping. And by the way, I don't get to use that voice very much anymore, so it's an opportunity. But he was like, I felt like he was really cozying up to Xi Jinping and to China and wanted to have these trade deals. But in the end, I'd say really the last 2 years, and especially after COVID, the final year, was him saying, oh, we tried everything and it didn't work. And, now look what, the ink wasn't even dry on the trade deal and they released this virus. The accuracy of that is perhaps disputed. But the point is that I felt by the end, like maybe he was kind of using the we tried everything as then an excuse later. And so are you saying that the Biden administration might be pulling a Trump?
I mean, I'm just saying, I have a tendency to be Little Mary Sunshine and optimistic about everything I can.
That's what I love about you.
Yes, that's me. You could just tell how
as the sun becomes a dramatic, like highlighting your eyes like a film noir.
Here's the deal. I mean, I'm just saying it's a possibility that this is, if you're looking at this from a liberal or perspective, that could please your base. You could say, well, we're breaking off from China, or we're getting Apple out of China because we don't like their environmental practices. And that's your justification. You could say you talk about the Uyghurs too. They, to some extent, they have, to some extent. Okay, at least they haven't gone against the genocide determination and so forth. If you're Republican or populist, or conservative, or mainly populist, you would do it Trump's way. You'd say, well, we gave them a chance to do a fair deal. They didn't take it. We can't trust them. It's not working. They're currency manipulators. They're manipulating their trade. And so we're going to pull out for that reason. I mean, there is no human rights party here. Okay? No one cares about this issue. This is really power politics mainly. Okay? I am here as a human rights guy to provide ballast to one side or another. I'm quite aware of that. Mm. It's a bit like my wife, who's an art historian, and she's there to help provide prices at auctions off various Chinese art goodies. Right? And what she writes has an effect on setting that price. human rights is a little bit the same, not just now to sound very cynical about it, but it is true. This is only being used by different sides at different times, largely. And the exception to that would be somebody like Pompeo, who seems to have some genuine beliefs about the survival of Taiwan, for example, for sure, and seems to have some beliefs about the Uyghurs as well. I think there are exceptions, but mostly this is a tool of power politics at this point.
So as a human rights activist, knowing that this is sort of how power politics work, how do you end up trying to use the system we're forced to operate under to affect change that, should be the morally correct thing to do, but that's never enough?
I'm not an activist.
So as Ethan Gutmann, the good all-around guy.
As Ethan Gutmann, the good all-around guy, your question is, what should I do, or what am I trying to do here?
How do you try to affect change when everything's about power politics?
Well, I think there is one. I'm being a little too overly cynical. The fact is, facts do change things. When we can really establish that something's going on, like this business of forced labor, right? The forced labor issue, we've been able to show directly that companies are involved. They've been able to come out with auctions, little electronic auctions of human beings, of parcels of Uyghurs being sold to such and such subcontract with Apple or Nike, right? That has a real impact. It causes Apple a lot of problems. It causes Nike a lot of problems. It takes them months to fix up that stuff. Months. Okay.